Many games, no matter how well balanced they are, will tend to fall victim to some pretty unintentionally optimal tools, whether it be an overpowered attack, an overpowered weapon, or an overpowered character. The Yakuza series isn't at all safe from this. While these abilities may not necessarily completely break the game, as they might have one or two downsides, they will make you either say, wow, I should have used this way sooner, or, oh my god. In Yakuza 3, heat generation is a fair amount slower than it is in some of the later games. To combat this, you can tiger drop everyone. Just tiger drop. You can tiger drop everyone in almost all of the games. In fact, it's not just tiger drop, but instead almost every counterattack that are available in every game, those being the attacks that are activated by holding the fighting stance button and hitting the heavy attack button. If you're a veteran of the series, you know that as soon as you get a counterattack, it's game over for every boss you encounter. Stuff like Yakuza 5 is extremely based because you can get the tiger drop after a grand total of 5.6 seconds in that game, meaning that the entire time you play as Kiryu, you are free to do the classic standing around and waiting until the enemy goes to swing at you and either do a weak little kick, or you combine the power of infinite suns within an IED known as your fist to then obliterate your opponents. Of course, it's not like a counterattack is or even should be the only thing you ever use, but in all honesty, many boss fights will devolve into you just waiting to counterattack them. In some games, or some fights in particular, it ends up being more or less your only option, but that's fine as they're always ridiculous anyway, so go ham. Besides the tiger drop, some particular favorite counters of mine are the counter hook from Zero and Yagami's two unique counters from Lost Judgment. The counter hook to me just has a satisfying animation, and the way enemies just drop dead on the floor makes it feel like you really are just swinging all of your weight into it. It's not as useful in Kiwami 1 as it was in 0, but in Lost Judgment's Dakota Files, it literally evaporates whoever it touches, and despite not having the money fly everywhere like it does in 0, it still has such a really satisfying visual effect to it. Then there's the Yagami ones. Yagami's dragon crushing fist is both cool in the parallels of a dragon dropping a tiger versus a tiger crushing a dragon, but it also is literally an explosion that even Michael Bay would be proud of. But that's not even his best counter. The Crane Styles True Crane Beast Slayer is a frame -12 counterattack that launches enemies in the air, allowing you to then smack the shit out of them relentlessly, unlike all the other counters which usually launch your opponent away from you. However, there are other ways to return your opponent's attack right back at them. Usually these come in the form of the parries, which tend to be either the fighting stance button and the grab button, or just by holding the guard button right before an enemy hits you. Some particularly good ones are the Legend style parry from Yakuza 0, which gives you a ludicrous amount of heat each time you do it compared to the other attacks in the game, or the one in Shin, which ups your combo speed and grants you invincibility for a short while after doing it. However, a parry of some description that I think is incredibly useful is Kaito's Bruiser's Hidden Arts. By literally bitch slapping your opponent's hand away, Kaito is granted a ludicrous combo speed buff. It obviously allows for faster combos, but it also allows for some rather nifty juggling options in which Lost Judgment is known for having a shit ton of. Speaking of both combo speed buffs and the secret arts, there's the even more dumb secret/hidden arts of the Crane, in quite the similarity to 3 specific abilities from Yakuza Kiwami relating to 3 of your fighting styles. Yagami can grant himself an attack, defense, and speed buff with these abilities. There's also the boxing style's champion arts, which in essence is kind of the same as the dragon one from Kiwami as it relates to your heat. However, unlike Kiwami, these buffs consume 0 heat and are ludicrously easy to pull off, especially the Crane one. If you're based, you'll start almost every fight in Lost Judgment by swapping to Crane and just going whoosh against the first attack that comes your way with a timing window about the same size as the Millennium Tower. Now that you've done this, you have successfully transformed your combo speed into that of the guns of an A10 Warthog for the next roughly 12 seconds. However, activating any of the arts from any of the other fighting styles resets that timer. This means that if you can manage to land enough attacks, all you need to do is dodge one attack and then sit there for the rest of the fight landing charge finishes, and you will theoretically have increased combo speed for an infinite amount of time. But if you thought that was all for buffs from Lost Judgment, you'd be wrong, you bloody fool. As much as people like to debate this, the honestly best fighting style for dealing with groups of enemies in Yakuza 0 was the Beast style, specifically by grabbing the nearest bike and imprinting tire marks onto all of their faces. So, of course, when they added the tank style to the Kaito files, they obviously thought, alright, we'll balance it a bit better this time around, right guys? But thanks to my insider information, I know that the guy with the smoking fetish from the last video stood atop a podium and said to everyone, you guys remember Bayonetta from Smash 4, Brawl Meta Knight, Leroy from Tekken 7, Bob from Tekken 6, Landorus, the DMR 14 from Warzone, the Gjallarhorn, the Rhino, Yoshitsune, Amigo, Unleashed. Okay, combine all of that and turn it into a video game. Oh, but nerf Flux Fissure, by the way. Anyway, yeah, the Punch Drunk, Deadly Dance ability from the Kaito files is what I'm talking about, where your weapon damage is way stronger and you obliterate everyone in the game and it's super easy. Speaking of Flux Fissure, yeah. Flux Fissure from Judgment. Moving away from Judgment now, we have Yakuza Like a Dragon. Once again, for possibly the millionth time from me, we have Haha Lol Head Trauma. An attack you have from level 1 with the Hitman class that costs an itty bitty amount of MP that does an illegal amount of damage for what it actually is. But there's more than just that. My man Jungi Han also gets Divine Shot, which is an ability that literally teleports him into the perfect spot to shoot everyone and deal a shitload of damage. Then there's the Speedrunner's Best Friend, simply known as the Kiwami moves that attack all enemies, with a very notable one being the Essence of Rose Typhoon from the host class. Ironically, for how many dog shit abilities there are in Like a Dragon, there are what feels like an equal amount of abilities that go insanely hard. Well, that's ironic because Like a Dragon, despite it deviating a fair bit from the previous games in the franchise and despite what people like to spam your comment section with, is still a really fun game deep down. But anyway, 6 MP for like the best thing ever? Bro, what the hell were they thinking? Another thing that comes to my mind is an ability that is definitely not exclusive to Akiyama in Yakuza 4, but it might as well be. Once you've gotten these specific upgrades, Akiyama can quick step out of any combo he's doing, which is useful for dodging an enemy's attack in the middle of a combo, but it's also really good for cyberbullying your opponents. I can't exactly do some of the good shit myself, but you can juggle the bad guys between your foot and a slab of concrete, a tree, people, any sort of barrier, simply by dodging and starting your combo all over again, over and over and over. Now finally, I wanted to discuss something that's not a traditional ability, as these ones apply to specific weapons. Obviously, there's stuff like infinite ammo pistols you can get, or blades that electrocute or set enemies on fire, but that's not what I'm talking about. Instead, I wanted to talk about Ishin's blacksmith minigame slash mechanic, which if you don't know about it, it's genuinely a really fun and interesting way to make Ishin lean a bit more into the subtle RPG elements that have always existed in the games prior to it. At the blacksmith, you can forge, enhance, and or synthesize different weapons and armor to make them stronger. The synthesis aspect of the blacksmith was something that I found very attractive, and the reason for this is because you can apply special abilities to your weapons or armor by fusing them with other items that have the desired ability. The equipment with the desired ability will be deleted, and the one that had an empty slot is now filled and will now have whatever effect applied to it. Now there are a lot of abilities. While I don't know if it'll work the same way in the remake as it does in the original, you can get some pretty good buffs from doing this. Two that I had on my American gun style was one that upped the fire rate and one that penetrated armor. I was already a big fan of shooting my enemies in the head, but after applying these specific aspects to my gun, I ended up having a lot more fun than what I was already having. While these may not have been the most optimal things to have on them, as there were far too many things for me to try out, I can safely say that it's cool being able to customize things in your own way and do whatever you want with them. But now that that's out of the way, Ishin has the good old parry into tiger drop combo. Although I only looked at a few, there are still many other attacks or abilities that you could argue are rather OP, so feel free to comment down below something you thought of and why you think it's busted. Just as a side note, I am very excited to see if Like a Dragon Gaiden takes the immense power found within Lost Judgment and ramps it up even further, because if it does, I think that would be rather funny. Also, stop telling me realize I spelled with a Z.